Hi everybody, this is an example video for Project 2 for your reflection after completing your story map. So I've got my little note sheet. I recommend you make one of these. It's better than reading off of a script. Makes a more natural video. So I'm just going to go through the questions that I'd like you to discuss in your video and give you some pointers, some hints maybe. Okay, so for the first question, this is kind of just about your perspective, right? In terms of how you have thought about climate change before, and then how this project has shaped how you think about it now in terms of the location you chose, or like at a smaller, like more local scale. When we talk about climate change, usually we think about it as like this big global problem. And so we can tend to forget that it has these local effects. And it affects our lives directly, even if we don't always notice it. So kind of as an example, if you think back to Project 1, a lot of you wrote about how you hadn't really thought about your commute before in this way, as being like an interaction between you and the environment. So for question 1, it's kind of how do you interact with climate change, or like how does it impact things on a smaller scale. For number 2, I won't really give examples for this, but I can say that it's just kind of comparing, right? A lot of the posts that I've looked at so far share some or most of the different impacts, including with my own. But I do know that from what I've seen so far, there's at least one or two that are probably going to be different from yours, or have different impacts just because of the locations they chose being different than California, or different than Southeast Asia, or that kind of thing. So I'm not going to give examples, but there's at least one so far that should have something different that probably won't occur in everybody's location. So it's really just about thinking about patterns and differences. For number 3, so very early, like the beginning of the course, we talked about scale. So thinking about large scale, like global, or then small scale, like local. And so just keep in mind that maybe there's a difference in effects if you think about something bigger, like bigger than the region would be maybe like a country or a continent, depending on what region or city you pick. And it can also be smaller, like the scale of a neighborhood. If there was some kind of impact that you thought about, but maybe you couldn't figure out how to fit it into just thinking about the city scale, something like that. And maybe even you started with one city or one region and you realize like, oh, maybe there aren't enough impacts that are obvious to me or easy to find articles for. Did you change it up? So you could talk about that. And then for the last one, this is, similar to a question that we had for Project 1, just thinking about the method and the tool that we used. You can think about it in terms of like it being analog versus digital. So like in Project 1, we drew them, which is analog. And then Project 2, we used this website. You can also think about in Project 1, we kind of had more freedom, right? Because we could draw whatever we wanted or whatever we thought of. But in this one, there's kind of this structure provided by the website where you're just picking a point on the map, you're including your write-up, and you're including your link. So maybe it was a little bit harder, or maybe it was easier. And then you could also think about like technical ability. Was it difficult for you to use the website? Was it easy? That kind of thing. And then one other thing you could talk about for question 4 is a lot of you in the Project 1 reflection talked about how one of the drawbacks for maps is that you can't include as much detail as like a written essay. But with this map project, we had this whole text component on the side allowing you to give detail. So maybe that is something to talk about when thinking about this tool and thinking about story maps in particular. You have a map, but you also have text. You can put in links, you can put in pictures, all that kind of thing. So yeah, so there's some ideas, there's some hints, and this is really just what I'm looking for, just you talking. The reflections from project one that I graded were great. Yeah. It ran a range from 3 minutes to 8 minutes, and they were all spot on. Yeah. You can do this as in-depth or as basic as you like, as long as you're showing your thinking and responding to the questions. So yeah. All right. I look forward to seeing reflections and seeing your maps. Okay. Talk to you later.